Hey again everybody, and welcome to another video. And this is a recent readings video that I probably should have done a few days ago because I'm a little, when it comes to some books that I read, if I don't talk about them like right away, then I tend to kind of lose the essence of what I read and what I felt about it. But I'm just going to wing it here because I don't even know that I could adequately explain anything about this book. I like literally the moment that I stopped reading it. It's a classic. It's kind of a mind blower, and I don't think I'm sufficiently equipped with the intelligence necessary to convey a lot of the points that at least that most people would probably try to get across when talking about this book. But anyway, I think I mentioned it before. The book is George Orwell's 1984. This was my first chance to actually read this book. I know that a lot of people either read it for school or, once they've grown up and they get out there, if they like to read, they want to expose themselves to the classics. And this is a classic that most people would have read prior, but I didn't read it until recently. I actually think I bought this book last year at Walmart one day when I was bored and I didn't have anything else to do. So I went to our book section and I was looking for an assortment of different things. Stephen King books. I was looking for one of the new Castle books. And I just happened to come across this, and it was relatively cheap. It's got a cover price of $9.99, but I think I paid no more than $5 or $6 for it. And then I didn't really even look at it, and it came home and it sat in my bedroom for a long, long time with a bunch of my other books. And after I finished reading Wolves of the Kala, the Dark Tower series, book number 5, and I didn't have number 6 yet. I still don't. Monetary issues are keeping me from even being able to buy a new $6 book, but I decided I'd tap into some of these that I already had. So 1984 was the book that I sat down with, and I have to admit I was really surprised. I mean, I was expecting, and of course I got, a very serious-minded book, but I didn't think that I would get into the characters. I didn't know that I would really get into this. They call it a negative utopia. I don't know, is that the same thing as a dystopia? I don't know if that terminology maybe hadn't come about when they put this synopsis on the back of it, but like I said, I didn't think I would get into the story of it. I would really care for the main character. I figured that the world in this book was going to be so sufficiently depressing that I would probably struggle to get through the book at all. Now, the world in the book is very depressing, but I was very, very enraptured by the story of the character, Winston, I believe his name was, and just, like the world that it was in. I guess I should just jump straight into this matter. A lot of people think about how this book was written in 1949 about the future that Orwell was depicting in 1984, 35 years later, and now 1984 is already another 30 years ago, which is just almost depressing for me to think about. But it was a vision of a future that a lot of people now would say we live in, or we live in a distant version of it. Or that we're headed that way. I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm not saying I don't agree with it. I do agree. In a lot of ways, life today is very similar to some aspects of the world in this book. But what my mind was captured by, first of all, and mainly, was just how unbelievably mind-blowing it must have been back in 1949 for a book like this to come out and depict this kind of world, hinting at technology and whatnot that, I don't think fully existed back then, but a lot of it does exist today. And I don't know. I guess it's just a historical thing that really gripped me. Not so much, like I said, that the world that we live in is already in some ways. Some aspects of this world are already in play today. I understand that, and I'm not happy about those kinds of things. But the book doesn't stimulate me to want to go out there and fight the power and do all that kind of stuff. It just, like I said, it makes me reflect on historically how this book was so ahead of its time in 1949. That was really the main thing that came from it. But there were other aspects of it that I identified with. First of all, like the main character in the book was the same age as me, 39. And in a lot of ways, a lot of things about his life remind me of mine. Just the feeling of being different, the acknowledgement of things being how they are, and how my existence in that world is a struggle every day. Maybe it's a completely different way, like because I'm coming at it from the anxiety issue, the depression issues, and all that kind of stuff. And this guy was a completely different thing. I mean, he obviously wasn't happy with his life and the way things were, but it was for different reasons. I can't necessarily say that it was from mental health reasons. In this world, they would have considered what he thought, the way he rebelled and knew that there was something better. They would have considered it as a mental health issue, but it wasn't really. I don't know, it's something that a person would have to read. I would just say anybody out there who hasn't read this book, especially if you have any kind of interest in political things, if you look at things politically minded or whatever, this is probably a book that you should read. And no matter what country you live in, you should check it out. No matter how old you are. I probably wouldn't hand this to my 8-year-old daughter and have her read it, but I hope that she gets a chance to read it when she's like in high school, whatever the appropriate age for reading this is. I know I missed out on reading this book and a lot of other classics because I went to 12 different schools over my entire kindergarten, from kindergarten to senior year, and 3 different high schools. And I know that I ended up in a lot of schools where they were like, next year we're going to be reading these books. Well, then that next year I went to a different school, and in that school they were like, well, we read those books last year. So I missed out on a whole lot of stuff. That's why I'm kind of piecing this stuff together now. I don't want to divert too much away from this book, but I hope to read a bunch of books that are considered classics, like Catcher in the Rye, of Mice and Men, and a whole bunch of other ones eventually. But I have to keep what I consider to be the fun reading in there with it, in between these more serious books. In other words, I have to read more Stephen King and stuff like that, and then every once in a while, do something like this. Well, I feel like had I had done this sooner to when I read the book, I'd probably have a lot more things to talk about. But I guess the most important thing to say is I enjoyed it for what it was. I was into it, considering it's not my normal style of literature. And anybody who watches this who hasn't read this book, give it a shot and then judge it for yourself. Because I really, really enjoyed it, despite it being so different from what I'm used to. I don't know when the next recent reading video will come up. I don't think I'm going to get another Dark Tower series book where I can read it for a while, so I'm just kind of looking at some of my books that I have in my own collection. If I can find some stuff I've never read, I'm going to jump into those. Otherwise, it may, like I said, it may be a while before I have something to really talk about. But anyway, I'm rambling. So George Orwell's 1984. Check it out. It is a classic. It'll make you think, and it may make you think about things in ways you didn't think that you would. So I guess that's it for me. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.